Hi folks, and a warm welcome back to the Financial Freedom Podcast. Today on the show is one of our Replay Rewind episodes with one of our podcast favourites, Adam Lawrence. Adam was on the show in episode 51, and the longer version of this can be viewed if you want to go back and view the longer episode. However, in this episode we dive right into the crucial matters. How Adam's done over 900 property deals, how he's done loads and loads of joint ventures, what his thoughts are on the economic outlook, and as a fan of economics, Adam is the best person to help us to understand what is actually happening in the world. Things like the renters' rights policy and how it's not affected Scotland. Things about why people are turning towards leases, but actually the effects of having a lease and how that property is handed back to you might absolutely underwrite and overwrite all of those values that you got through that lease cash flow. All of these things are really impactful to property investors. So we wanted to just bring this back to you, dive right in, and hope you enjoy it. So let's on with the podcast. Just before we get this episode going, I want to give a huge shout out to this episode's sponsor, our friends, one of our great brokers, Simple Fast Mortgage. Now, the brokering industry has good, bad, and everything in between, but also specialisms. And Simple Fast Mortgage, quite simply, specialise in creative property finance. So if you're a property investor and you're looking to buy something quickly, these are the guys that you need to be talking to because they've been there, done that, and worn that t-shirt. They're investors themselves and they know how to help. So we'll put it in the show notes as to how to get in touch with them. But Simple Fast Mortgage, go to their website, fill out the contact us, and tell them we sent you.
Just before we get going with today's podcast, just a quick announcement that our book is now live on Amazon. If you go and search for Financial Freedom at BDRR, you'll find a book that describes the mindset, strategy, systems that we've put together to deliver over 50 projects in 5 years. We launched it in 2025 and it went to number 1 in 3 separate categories on the bestseller list. So hopefully you'll find some real good value out of it. And just one more time, Financial Freedom, BDRR on Amazon.
And so if you looked at the actual type of properties you own and things like that generate your wealth, what do you mainly focus on?
So I think the wealth bit is an interesting point of view, because especially these days, I think you get a very different. I used to look at things as, right, we've got sort of 3 broad types of properties that we'll have. All your dream stuff for me has always been 3-bed semis in great areas with great schools, right?
They're very solid assets, aren't they?
Super solid, super sticky tenants, very motivated to pay the rent, etc., etc. Good capital growth.
Yes.
Right? They don't really yield enough anymore in most parts of the country.
Because of interest rates and things like that, etc.
Holding them is a luxury.
Yes.
And holding them at 75% LTV, it's not going to happen. So that gives you a few options then. Do you then run them as short let? Because then you can still hold the semi, but you're doing something else. So there's a trading business, and I do a little bit of that. Just about wipes its feet at market.
Yeah.
If it has to go to market rent. Because the thing is, you can't necessarily control how many other short lets there are around you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then we would have like core engine stuff. So that would be your cheaper 2 up, 2 down, maybe 3 up, 2 down, sort of mid-terrace that's all over the place in England. But I would be in the cheaper areas naturally, so that there would be yield.
So decent yields, relatively decent cash flow.
And terraces have performed okay as far as cap growth goes as well. So
all mine have.
When you look at it, there's not. Maybe some of that 3-bed semi in the nice school is more in my head than it is in the factual data, you know. And then the cash cow sort of stuff, which would these days fall into, you know, usually 1-bed flats because they normally yield pretty well. But I'm talking blocks rather than leasehold because the leasehold's a bit of a drag, as everybody knows. Or maybe it's let to a provider, let's say, and you're getting an enhanced rent, or you've just got a 5 or a 7-year lease.
Yeah, long lease.
Where you've got some guarantees in place. But those, when they're finished, and they're not necessarily finished at the end of that 5-year lease or 7-year lease or whatever, but we've had some of those now for, I think we're 11 years in, and we've had a few come back. And when they come back, you then look at, well, what we're going to do with it. It's not a very attractive let with fire doors with closers on and all the rest of it. It doesn't work as a mini-mo operated in the private market, at least not for my operation on my numbers. So then do you get rid of it? And if you do, how do you get rid of it? Because it's not that presentable for the open.
So you either have to refurbish it a little bit.
It's a really good point, isn't it? Because I was again debating with somebody last night, actually, at the PIN event in Birmingham, who was saying the benefits of the 5-year leases. I said, well, the benefit is in the cash flow at the time.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily in the unit that I own from a capital point of view.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily when you hand it back. Because what do I do? You know, so you know, all of that extra profit or whatever, because I've not designed it for something I can control. So I can't just go and rent it to necessarily another user type of that, because those lease providers are fewer.
Different requirements as
Whereas
well.
if the general market is bigger, right? That's the problem. It's just people. working people or families or whatever it is, and I can target that market. That's a large market. So if someone hands it back to me, I can rent it again.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've been thinking about over recent times is when there's another election in this country, who will win, what will happen. Now the word HMO in certain parts of the press is being associated with, well, that must be asylum.
Yes.
And it must be illegal asylum. And these are all these jumps. They're just wrong.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter about the facts because no one's looking for the facts.
Yeah,
They're just believing what they're
sentiment,
told.
The sentiment and the stigma is like across all HMOs, isn't it? And like you and I know, there's a very big difference between your high-end professional HMO and one
It shouldn't even be the same acronym.
and one that might have ex-offenders or asylum seekers and things like
The other
that.
side of it is as well, again, we got involved in some of that on the asylum side over 10 years ago. And at the time, we're really pleased. I think there's real good social purpose to this.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And then when I first heard about them this government wanting to close down the hotels, I thought, well, that'll be more needed for Serco and the likes and all the rest of it. But then when I thought, well, where the political sentiment is at the moment, do I want to be holding 60 or 70 HMOs that are leased to the Sercos of the world who have
If
to give
policy
notice
changes,
and all the rest? And you just think, on the basis that you might lose 10% plus on the way out on what you thought it was worth,
It won't be.
all you've had is income.
Yeah.
So that's why I picked up the word wealth.
Yeah.
Because the wealth really would come from your 3-bed semis and the stuff that can trade.
They're sort of indestructible in a way, aren't they? Because they're always going to be needed.
The utility is super high.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you look at what we've built over the last 10 years, we haven't built anywhere near enough 3-beds.
Yeah. And we
2-beds as it goes.
Yeah,
4-bed pluses, plenty. 1-bed flats, okay.
Yeah.
In the middle, really.
And there's a reason for that, isn't there? Because the four bed ones are the ones that retail at the highest of sales value.
Exactly. It's not detached, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely
So everyone's
right.
like every single scheme. That's why the councils have had to bring in this social provision to every new development.
Yeah.
Because all that was being produced was 4+ bedroom
Well, that's
schemes, right?
But if you look at the right to buy and the replacement and things like that, last year I think they sold off about 7,500. They replaced about half of those, and replacement doesn't mean they built 3,750. 60% of the replacements were buybacks, and they sell for every one they sell, they replace with one less bedroom. Is roughly how it breaks down when you look at the data. So it's all hidden in the layers like it always is. But the 4-bed, your 4+ bed social, or even your 3+ bed social homes are just evaporated, and the waiting lists are
massive,
horrific.
Yeah.
So there's a really smart move there, then, isn't there? Which is, can you add that 3rd bedroom?
Oh, turn a 2 into a 3. I love things like that because that's always
so smart.
That's worked before we were born, and it works today, and it'll work in 10 years.
Because if you've got the classic, let's say it's even a Victorian terrace, let's say it's a big one, right?
Yeah. Nice bay windows.
Yeah. When you look at it, I automatically think HMO.
Yeah.
Right, automatically, right? Because it's normally a good footprint.
Yeah.
It can convert to a 5-bed with the existing footprint generally.
Absolutely,
But the reality is, if you've got that 2 receptions, large receptions, and a kitchen on the ground floor, you're going to have at least 3 bedrooms upstairs. At least. You might even be able to get 4.
And the front room is always big, it's big, isn't it? Yeah.
Double
It could be 2 rooms. It's a really big one.
So HMO is one option.
Yeah.
But if you then do that and you've got, say, 4 rooms on the top floor, it's much easier then to convert them to, back to bedroom. But just
anywhere you're in the country,
change your fire door.
Some London councils are paying 3,500 quid plus a month for those.
Yeah.
So if you think that's no bills, no management really to think of, if it's that sort of setup with an FRI lease, with a decent lease,
yeah.
And
then on the semis, you see, like you drive down they used to put the dormer on the front. There's no dormer on the back. And I'm always thinking, well, you can just add a room here, because I agree that 3-bedroom space is underutilized. The utility of it is so important because it's such a good transition.
Yeah.
Because that's the traditional mum, dad, 2 kids. So your bracket of target market there is huge.
Yeah.
It's a huge target market.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most underutilized space right now in property.
You'll sell them for top money. Totally agree.
Right, this leads on really well to the next line of questioning, I think, actually. So just want to talk a bit of macroeconomics with you, because obviously you have the Sunday supplement that we listen to, the Proponomics.
Give it a bit of a promo. How do we find this?
So I was just saying to you guys earlier, I publish it on my LinkedIn on a Sunday morning. I then read it or ad-lib a bit, to be honest with you, live on YouTube. Try to do that on Sunday morning as well, but can't always fit it in. And then it gets uploaded onto the podcast platform. So you can find it on my YouTube. There's about 1,900 subscribers. If we can get to 2,000, I'll be grateful. to everybody listening to this.
Sounds good.
It's called Proponomics.
You get to Proponomics, yeah. So we'll hope you get to 2,000 hopefully. We'll get to 500 first. Catch up to you. Right. So macroeconomics. So firstly, are you optimistic currently about the UK economy over the next 5 years? And what do you specifically see as some of the challenges, specifically in the property space?
So I think I'm more optimistic than some other people because they're so miserable.
Yes.
But that doesn't necessarily make me technically optimistic.
There's always ups and downs to everything, aren't there, in a way? So
Sure. So, but I think it's nowhere near as bad as a lot of people are making out. But there are some serious long-term structural problems that it's then how do you address, or who is going to address those long-term structural problems. And if I picked on Nigel Farage, because I had a leaflet through my door the other day with him pointing at me like that, poster from the Lord Kitchen or whatever it is from the World War II, you know, it says that you read some stuff and you think, well, look, someone's got to do that. That makes sense, right? Okay. And then it says, we'll cut your taxes. And you just think, what's the implications of that? Because the last time we tried that and we didn't think it through very well, we had a near bond yield meltdown. And that's a big problem for me.
But is that
I've got a lot of bond yield debt, right?
But was that because all of that came in at the wrong time and the planning wasn't right? So if you took Liz Truss and the timing that came in, inflation was very, very high at that point. So, you know, the plan to cut taxes and do this and that quite quickly.
There are a lot of people that say the policies are right as well, by the way.
Well, right policy, wrong time.
Yeah.
Right policy, wrong time, and wrong...
I think you
too quick.
Yeah.
Too much too quick, in a way.
There's a huge problem with that. I think the biggest... I don't think that's why everything happened in the way that it did at all. As usual, it's a bit of a mainstream narrative that's crafted.
Yeah.
With people with agendas, usually. I think that the chief problem was there's checks and balances in place for the finances of this country, and they just ran a truck over them and said, we don't care about the Office for Budget Responsibility. I mean, listen to the words that you're saying. You don't care about being responsible with the budget. So bond investors around the world hear that and go, well, we're not holding those, are we? Get out of the UK. Just get out of there. You're just absolutely turned over by that. So the thing is, if you look at Thatcher's policies, when Thatcher came in, top rate of income tax that you could pay, I think, was 83%. And the top rate of capital gains tax, 98%, because Dennis Healy had said, we'll squeeze the rich till the pips squeak, right? That's famous
That
saying.
is crazy, isn't it? 98%.
So when they cut, you are talking like taking the tree down.
It's a massive shift.
And they didn't have the OBR to think about, and they didn't have an independent Bank of England. They didn't have all of that, right? And we know that didn't work because we all probably know what the Laffer curve is. You know, you tax them too much, you get less money. It obviously happens all the time.
Which seems like that's potentially the scenario currently, because
that's a very good point. That so you tax them too much, you get less money, right? And this is why I had a rant the other week about this. And he's like, I don't often talk about politics, especially in like the wide forum. I wrote an absolute essay. Nobody can read it. It's too long. Don't go and read it. And it was just me.
I got about halfway through and gave up.
I was like just ranting about it. But at a fundamental level, the current government don't seem to understand the difference between a percentage and actual cash. Right? You know, like a fundamental level. It's like, if you put this percentage up too high, I'm going to stop doing this. Or I'm going to work out ways to reduce
employ
that.
more people overseas, or move my business overseas, or move completely.
And you're going to get the less of this, you know?
Well, to be fair to my former fellow student, I think they have tried to do things like they need to cut welfare. They know they need to. They haven't gone about it the right way. You could argue that, but they haven't got the support of the MPs behind them. Whereas the welfare state is a huge problem.
Yeah, it's a real millstone.
So
isn't it?
if I see Farage hanging around in sort of 2027, 2028 with a chainsaw like Milei from Argentina, I'll be quite pleased about that, to be honest. But the question becomes, is there enough political will? You now live in a country where 50% of people contribute to the tax system and 50% of people are net withdrawers from the tax system. And of course, fair few people of those retired. But that's the reality of the situation, right? Only 1 in 2 people.
And I think the last time I looked at this, because I don't really spend enough time looking at these things, is it's literally a 5% swing would change the economy on its head. So it's 5%. That's all they need.
In a growth perspective, you mean?
Yes. If you've got the bell curve of that 50%, if you move that to 55% contributing, 45% withdrawing,
humongous,
massive. The difference is so big.
The OBR published a paper that they do every 6 months or so that basically talks about the next 50 years of the economy. Normally, just everyone's like, yawn, what's going on? This time round, change of government and all the rest of it, they said, look, basically, we're screwed, which they've been saying that for years. So there wasn't much new news in there. But you need to sort out the health of the nation. You need to, in fact, they mentioned climate change. Climate change is absolutely minimal in economic impact compared to the other two things in the report. which is the health of the nation and productivity.
Yeah,
And if you haven't got your smartest, brightest, best people working on productivity and your best tax policy working on productivity, you have not read that paper.
But on the productivity factor, if you're supporting generally business, small business, medium business, or business in general, that will then create more tax, which will then support the health.
Well, I'd imagine one of the most, possibly, Farage would say that really by having, it's called moral hazard, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you've got a welfare state, socialist health service that sorts everybody out, there's free at the point of consumption, then people aren't as bothered about looking after themselves as they would otherwise be. Then someone else would say, well, not sure about that, Nigel, because look at America, where the safety net is nowhere near as good, and people are not necessarily doing it. There's big issues with big food and all
loads of mental health issues.
Loads of stuff that probably tax needs to help out, but tax won't do it. Tax won't do it on its own. But, I don't have Chris Van Tullochen in somewhere talking about ultra-processed stuff and taxing it.
And America's the only place in the world where I've seen literal schizophrenics begging on the streets.
Yeah, they're provision for stuff like that. And
it's really bad.
I know. When I lived in New York, my eyes were opened wide when I was living there.
But in Hong Kong, in some of the social housing, outside the social housing, people live in cages. Even in France, when we say, well, these hotels and all the rest of it, but they're in tents in France. We can do that if that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
If that's what
you're right. There's always another alternative that.
But then it comes down to productivity, right? So productivity is directly related to the percent and the actual, right?
Well, there's multiple ways of measuring it, but not at the simplest level. You're looking at cost of output, cost of input, right?
So let me give you a very simple analogy. Very simple analogy, right? Which is our business is now spending more on our finance department to be able to be more economically aligned to reduce the amount of, let's say, tax that perhaps we would have paid that we shouldn't have paid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we're not as focused on growth.
Yeah.
We're focused on saving.
Yeah.
Right? That's productivity change. That's a productivity shift. And we're only an SME, right? Yeah. So if you multiply that by the number of companies in the UK, because of those policy changes, because of those improvements on the ENI and, the higher rates, whatever, we're now forced to look at, right, how do we reduce and how do we do, and that takes time away from the productivity of growth. And that is the fundamental, right?
And also because of the world we live in, we're not tied geographically for a lot of roles now because they can be done remotely. Obviously, we've got really, really good team in other parts of the world. So it takes people away from local jobs. And there's other issues like national
where am I hiring?
And whatever that affect those sort of things.
This time last year, this person might have been a UK role. Now it's not a UK role.
Yeah.
What am I buying? This time last year, I might have taken a punt on that property and now not taking a punt on that property.
Absolutely right. And that's what the 5% stamp does. It prices deals out as well. That would have worked at 3%. It doesn't work at 5%.
Well,
vendor can't take
the simple project
off. What do you do?
The bread and butter projects that we do for, say, clients to convert like a terrace to a 5 or 6 bed HMO, because of the combination of stamp duty, inflation, and still a bit of price growth. Yeah. Suddenly, you need an extra 20 or 30K we worked out for the same sort of deal in our areas than 12, 18 months ago, just because of those ingredients. So
the sentiment is right, which I think the sentiment is right. And I'm a property investor, right? So for me to say this, which is people shouldn't be able to just profit from property. They should have to do something, right? But the problem is, if you're a first-time buyer, the most commonly bought property is either a very small semi-detached or a terrace, right? For a first-time buyer. If that needs work, what do you do? If you're a first-time buyer, 25 years old, let's say, in fact, looking at me, I've only got my money for my deposit, right? So if I've got one of those, it's been empty for a year, it needs all this work.
It's unmortgageable. It is anyway.
Yeah, it needs to be in pretty good condition.
Or even if it is mortgageable, but it needs loads of work. A mortgageable because it's got an old kitchen bathroom. I don't have the money to do that.
It's one of the reasons why the 1.2 million empty homes in England. You constantly attack people who flip property over the years. Yeah, flippers used to be around loads, right? 10 years ago. Yeah, very few people flip trading. Sure, trade is when they can get the really good
the traditional
deals.
flip to refurb and make money is a lot more difficult.
And now they've squeezed the renovators to rent.
Yeah.
So you've squeezed the flippers, you've squeezed the renovators to rent. You're complaining about there not being enough homes.
And there's 1.2 million empty in England.
Thinking, maybe incentivise the people who do the renovations and the people who do the rental.
Right.
Well, this is like.
So what was let's just go to your question then that you said you were going to ask Adam before.
I think we've probably answered it. Right. Oh, yeah. So So yeah, macroeconomics, right? You are a student of this, so I'm not really. So I'm listening to you and I'm asking questions because I find it really interesting. This is probably why I don't, because I'll just get too deep in it.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? I can see myself doing it. I don't.
We can always talk about it from our perspectives and things like that. That's the key thing, isn't it?
All right, so let's just say I've conquered the UK, right? I'm now in charge.
Yeah.
I give you the keys to the castle.
Yeah.
Adam, what do we do?
Well, I think you've got to do a number of things, really. You've got to have a go at the welfare state one way or another, including things like getting rid of the triple lock, dead unpopular. People have been saying it for years, totally unsustainable, right? So you've got to, and you'd be much better to do that than get rid of the winter fuel payment, for example, right? Big mistake. But that doesn't mean pensions aren't going to go up every year.
Sorry, explain to me what the triple lock is.
Triple lock is what guarantees pensioners a rise of the best of 2.5%.
Right.
CPI or average wage growth. So they're getting 4.7% next year, pensioners.
Right.
And the cost of that is gigantic. And it's all factored into this. Then what that does in reality is it just by a little bit, it puts up the cost of debt to the whole of the country. And then it has a knock-on effect, right? So you've got to get rid of the triple lock.
And on that, if you wonder why, because I was born in 1980 and I at 1980 thought I could retire at 62. It's now 68.
Yeah.
It's going to be 70 before I retire. And that is why...
Well, this is why you're not going to give me the keys to the castle, because I'm going to tell you, by the end of the century, that needs to be 75.
Yeah.
But we've approached that whole thing in the wrong way. Because when it was first introduced, the average lifespan for a pensioner was 2 years. And now it's like 14 years.
Yeah,
it is. 13 years.
It's getting longer and longer, isn't
it?
Right?
And so you're paying 6.5 times as much as you were. It just can't work. Final salary schemes in the public sector have got to go. I would be the guy with the chainsaw saying these things have got to go. Certain things I would be introducing things in the health service, probably a bit more draconian than a tenner if you miss an appointment and things like that. But not as much can be free at the point of consumption as it is.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to work out, and obviously probably rely on the charity sector, rely on the third sector to make sure this doesn't go completely wonky. But you get these huge costs that ramp up as people get older, apart from anything else.
Yes.
I'm not advocating euthanizing old people. You know what I mean? They put their money into the system in good faith and all the rest of it. But the way, if you ask the average, certainly our sort of age or maybe a bit younger, they don't think they're ever going to get a state pension. So show them a path to a sustainable state pension, which means they can relax, but it will create some jobs that make the most of experience for people who are 50 plus. Because at the moment, up to 25, 30 graduates are struggling. People over 50 are struggling. You need a workforce that can work till 70.
Yeah.
Comes back to the health thing.
Yeah.
And pile some money into productivity, for goodness sake. And when it comes to saying what's happened on growth and all that in terms of, you know that regulation needs to be cut in certain areas. They do not understand the housing market.
Not at all, do they?
That's so bad, isn't it?
Right?
Yeah.
Them lot do not understand the housing market, right? So actually sort the regulations out that you need to. Yes, good stuff with planning and all the rest of it, but more needs to be done, right? And they need huge investment in social housing. Like you said, it shouldn't just be about profit, right? Social housing, the only entity that can build social housing is the government.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who get the benefit if people are off benefits, working, producing more for the economy.
And
goes back to your 55-45 point.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's like you say, if it's relied on developers to do it, they need a profit to do it. So,
of course they do.
the government can't blame them for not building when they can't build it for a profit.
And this filters back to things like the bond yields. And if you're a pension fund and you can get 5.5% for 30 years, that's more than you need to pay your members of your scheme. So you don't need to take any risk. You don't need to fund private equity or this or that or startups or anything. Don't bother. You might do a little bit, but you're not going to bother. So there's a huge impact I would give the Bank of England the brief of managing the bond yields adequately, whether that required to change the way you issue the debt. It gets pretty technical around all of that. Yeah. But Farage says you can save 40 billion a year by not paying the commercial banks interest on the savings they have at the Bank of England that they have to have by law, right? They've got to keep money on deposit. That's not really true, because if you took it all away, they would probably lose 10, 15 billion of it, and they would seek to recover 25 to 30 billion of it by either paying savers less or charging us more to borrow money, which again would impact everybody. So there's no real free lunch here, but you need and you need to show you've got I would say, look, half of what we, an arbitrary figure, I wouldn't say half, I'd do the numbers properly is what I'd do, but half of what we grow by, we can spend that extra next year. The other half has got to go back into paying back some of the money we've had over COVID and all the rest of it, so that we've got a future for our children and our children's
Reduce
children.
the debt, you
Otherwise, we've got no future. And when people feel they've got no future, the brightest and the best go to the universities, get their degrees, then leave the country. You know, and that's what you're seeing happen. It's not really the millionaires and stuff that I worry about too much, because all of that's, I think, a bit blown out of proportion. It's the next generation who are going to be taxpayers for 50 years.
Right. So that's also the opportunity loss in a way, isn't it? So if you've got
absolutely.
a young, bright person who can bring a lot of benefit economically to the economy, and they, like you said, are just going to Dubai or whatever, Portugal, whatever it is.
To be a doctor in Canada, whatever.
Doctor in Canada, exactly. So it's the opportunity cost of missing out of that person and their benefit in the country.
And you subsidise their degree, because medical degrees cost more than they charge. And the whole way
so it ends up being a net worse result to the country.
The whole way we charge for university is wrong anyway, and they've put too many chips in trying to put people into everybody into university. Massive mistake. Tony Blair's arguably biggest mistake.
Yeah. Right. So, I want to flip similar topic, but renters' right bill. What effect do you think that's going to have on the property space and the economy generally?
I mean, I think it depends on how many people you think really understand it at the moment. They're probably far fewer than you might expect, because we're all immersed in it and all the rest of it. I'm not overly worried, because a lot of it looks a lot like what the laws have looked like in Scotland for the last 8 years. Got a reasonable portfolio of properties in Scotland. I can tell you it doesn't behave any differently from England. If anything,
no major differences.
The system's a bit fair. I mean, the technicals are there. There's no Section 21. That's been Section 21 for years. But if you want to sell it, you can sell it.
It's a political thing, that.
It's
in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because Section 21 is so flawed anyway, right?
I think this is
it all comes down to the courts and things like that.
Yeah, it's such a flawed process.
I mean, now you've taken over in your coup, right? You'll understand this. But what happens is people tell you don't know. So they tell you, and then you have a choice whether to believe them or not. So they're telling you Section 21 is causing homelessness. And you're going, oh, okay, so we just get rid of Section 21, it won't be a problem. Well, no, what you need to know is how many Section 21s are issued because it's the least line of resistance, and how many will become rent arrears evictions, for example, and what then? So it'll take them 3 years to realise they've messed that up, and by that point they'll be either out of government or they'll just about hold on for another term because Andy Burnham will be in charge.
The reason for homelessness is almost entirely the finance sector, in my opinion. Well, because if you get bad credit, as an example, and you snowball from that position, you are on the path towards homelessness.
This is where two-tier society kicks in, right?
Yeah, if you have bad mental health and you don't get treatment because you can't get appointments and that kind of thing, you're on the road, and it's almost entirely tied in together. So, like, as a typical example right now, rather than getting ready to Section 21, what they should be doing is saying to the local authorities, stop telling people that can't afford to pay their debts to stay in their houses.
Yeah, and then they get CCJs.
Because then they get CCJs, they get bailiffs, they can't pay or take it away, turning up at their doors, and then they can't get future credit, they can't get future mortgages, they can't get future tenancies because everyone does credit checks these days. And all of a sudden you stood there going, well, I now need the council to house me. And if you're not on one of the really specific lists of we can only house this criteria of people, then what do you do?
Well, most local authorities break the law every day and no one holds them to account for it. That's just one example. And the problem is in the system.
Do you mean when they tell tenants to stay in a property?
That's one way. When they're not paying their statutory duties.
But they can't.
You're not supposed to be in a B&B for more than 6 weeks. It's not working. Labour accept that. But the only way to get around it is to take units out of the private rental sector and use them as temporary accommodation. And then you go back to what we already talked about, which is your 3 beds and your 4 beds, the waiting lists are 5+ years long. So it's not temporary accommodation. Well, someone's going to be in there for 10 years.
If you look at
nowhere for them to go.
If you look at what is one of the main causes of stress and mental health problems in the UK, it's financial.
Oh, absolutely.
Finance,
And it's kind of like a rocket in the last few years.
Yeah, and so financial education and helping people stay financially healthy, it should be a real priority, and there's no one talking about that.
100%.
They don't do it at school anywhere near as it's horrific like that.
Well, Tim's wrote a book.
I was going to say there's some good books out there called Quick Lessons for the Real World, what they don't teach you in school, and that does give you some basic financial education.
We've done an episode.
And we did do an episode on it. Great. Sense. Thanks for the plug, guys. Right, we're gonna move away from this now and go. I want to talk about joint venture ships because I believe
back to property.
Back to property. So I believe you've done quite a few deals over the years, and you've entered into into quite a few JVs. So I just want to know, like, what advice would you give to our listeners who are considering joint venture partnerships and getting partnership with people? What should they do? What should they look out for? And how should they maybe structure those sort of partnerships?
Just before you answer the questions, or would you just mind building the authority here? Because we haven't actually asked Adam how many property deals he's done.
So you mentioned 550 plus at the start, didn't you? That's a little bit out of date, what's given you. So we're in sort of heading towards 900 now.
All right, okay.
Done. So, and almost all of those are exclusively in JV structures.
Right.
Okay, great.
I've done all sorts of different JVs. Not all of them have been perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
And as I've gained more experience in various things, I've needed partners that have different skill sets apart from anything else, or have just got cash and are silent partners who either usually fit into the camp of being a nightmare or being really, really good to work with. And obviously trying to work with the latter there. But I think you need to think about it you really need to think about it like a relationship and almost like a marriage.
100%.
To an extent.
Yeah.
You're linking together your personal credit files and things like that.
Yes.
Potentially, you're on the hook for the whole. Most lenders will put you on the hook for the whole debt. Now, it's not so dangerous when you're talking about stuff that you're holding on to, because normally, even if you owe 75%, the vast majority of that will come back, even if the receivers are in. And you don't want the receivers to be in if it ever comes to that. You want to try and keep control of assets. So be prepared. And I've gone in with a very flexible attitude towards, if someone wants to sell, right, I'm going to facilitate that. I'm not going to stand in the way to that. So you then sort of have to put your own interests second to an extent. Yeah. And you're thinking more about, I've done a lot of deals because I'm quite good at putting myself in other people's shoes. And that includes my JV partners. So what's driving them? What do they want? At some points in time, I've worked with and still have worked with people who are 30 years older than me. Different drivers.
Yeah.
Right?
Different time in their life, isn't it?
And some of them have wanted to exit while we've been working together. And I've always said to myself, well, okay, when that happens, that's what it is. You know, it's not ideal if you're buying and selling within a few years and you were looking at a stable rental portfolio with the frictional costs you've got with all the rest of it, you're not going to make anywhere near the money you would have done if it had gone on for 20 years, like you showed in the plan in the first place. But that's what it is. So take the money and move on, sort of thing. But yeah, take it very, very seriously and understand you don't want your partner to be the same person as you. You've got to add value. They've got to add value, you know, and you've got to have regular, very honest, ongoing conversations.
Good communication is a way to put it, isn't it?
Well, I mean, that's just so important in everything, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very, very basic, but we do talk to people sometimes.
Turn up. It's basic.
Yeah, turn up, get shit done.
Yeah.
But we have talked to people who've had joint ventures that haven't worked, and typically they'll just say, I can't even get hold of the person anymore. Comms are broke down. I can't find them. Yeah. Don't hear from them.
Same with the tenancy. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of similarities in all that.
But what you said before a little bit, I think you started with like skill sets is very important. I think a lot of people miss that initially with joint ventures because they go, right, I just need the money. He's got the money. Let's go.
Yeah.
Whereas like they might not be that compatible together. They might not have a good long-term relationship for various reasons and things like that. So
if you listen to lots of successful people talk, you'll hear them say, won't you, that it's saying no. It's what you say no to that defines you. And that's the same thing. It takes quite a lot of stones to say no to money, for example, but unless you've got people throwing at you left, right and centre. But you've got to do it sometimes. And what do they want? And what are their expectations? Like I say, if you, in the worlds where you've got 5% stamp and then maybe a little bit more and building where it's expensive and all the rest of it, right? You better be holding this for a few years. Otherwise, it wasn't worth doing it. You might as well just left it in the bank.
Yeah. So when you say expectation, it's like, right, we're intending to hold this minimum 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, something like that from the outset. Because I know we've had sort of those discussions where it's like, right, these that we're doing minimum, say 10 years, but then after that we could reassess if we want to keep it or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the right sort of time horizon. And the stock market really is the same. Like that, it should be, you know, and people don't always look at it like that. But those are your time horizons that you want to be considering.
10 to 15 years is a good level of time that you've got generally a decent bit of capital growth and things like that.
And what I always think, there aren't many 10-year periods where you wouldn't have done pretty well.
Yeah,
especially when you're going in like an entry like today, where actually inflation's kicked property prices down in real terms since COVID.
Yeah, the last few years,
There's probably more upward momentum. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is some pent up demand.
So it's a good time. It's a good time to be getting in, but that's a good time frame to be. But I always find interesting the difference between, if you look at a 10-year model and a 15-year model, those last 5 years do a lot of legwork.
It's compounding, isn't it?
Oh, it is magic, isn't it? If they bring in this no stamp duty lower than 500k and then this one above, you watch those 400 grand houses jump to 500 grand overnight.
Yeah. Right. So you raised that a very, very good point, actually, because I've sold my first relatively long-term property. That was 14 years. Most of the work in that growth was the last 4 years. So if I sold after year 10, made a minuscule profit.
That new build I told you about way back, I sold that last year. And it very similar. Most of the legwork was last 4 or 5 years. So amortize that.
So listen to compounding. Everyone talks about it, but let it do its work. Basically, very good advice. Right.
Add in the odd pandemic.
Add in the odd pandemic and financial crisis and all these sort of things.
And no houses are being built. And,
yeah. So in your entrepreneurial journey, I want to know maybe something that you're most proud of or something that you're really happy that you've achieved. And then also I just want to know some of the biggest challenges or things that have gone wrong or something like that people can maybe learn from, our listeners.
So I think the proud one is easy, really, because I'm in a fortunate position whereby I can be involved in a not-for-profit. And I've got a property that I own with a couple of JV partners. I try and keep the story as short as possible. I went there for a site visit. It's commercial property. And there was a lot of people upset, clients of this service and the staff of a service that were a tenant. And I said, what's going on? Just happened to see this on the day. And they said, we're all being made redundant and they're closing it down. And I thought, I knew about this service. We already gave them a pretty cheap rent. I thought, there's no way this service isn't viable, right? So it turned out that the tenant, they were a big nationwide charity, anchor tenant of the site, were pulling out of the entire county, right, of daycare services. That's what this did, daycare services for adults with learning difficulties and things like that, right? So I said, well, what's going on? Hunted down the consultant who was doing the work for them and basically said, why is this going wrong? They said, well, they've got like 5 layers of management and bureaucracy and blah, blah, blah. So I said, right, well, in that case, maybe we can take it on. And we managed within under 2 months to recruit someone and be able to keep the staff and keep the customers who were saying things like, we've got nowhere to go if this closes, it's a disaster. And since we've had it, we have more than trebled the size of it in a couple of years. And it's it'd be a great business, but it's a not-for-profit. But it's a fantastic achievement, and there's so much
to be able to rectify
the staff who work there, they do it for the cause, you know what I mean? The clients, they wouldn't have anything else. But in the world we live in, all it's done is the local authorities closed down more sites because they said, you're really good at this, you look after everybody. So we did it, but okay, if that's what we've got to do. So that's the proud bit is easy. Stuff that's gone wrong, there's just too much to choose from, really. But I would say, what's the bigger mistakes that people can learn from? I've bought stuff sometimes in order to get other deals and things down the line. And some of those have been okay, and I've probably been a bit lucky, and some of those have not been so good. So here's one that we made within the last sort of 12, 18 months. A couple of flats, don't really do anything around London and the southeast because the yield's not really there. These 2 flats were super cheap. We're talking like 60, 65k,
right? Which
sounds stupidly cheap, doesn't it?
Yeah, for
they
down
had
south,
works done. On Google Street View, there was roof works being done. But what happened was the freeholder, this is only found out after we'd bought them because it was a very, very fast deal. The freeholder had basically taken the money and not done the work, not got the works
completed it. Yeah.
So the roof still needed doing, and the freeholder's still a crook, basically. So what are you going to do? Are you going to litigate against them? Are you going to do this? This is years of pain and cost and all the rest of it. Or are you going to say, you got me there, guys, well done. They're going back into auction. Get on with it, see what happens, and let someone else try and fix it who's local.
Such a good point, isn't it? Because
we lost money on those 2 deals.
It's such a good point because like the phrase, you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs.
Yeah.
So you don't realize what that is until you start really trying to do stuff.
Yes.
Right. And when you start really trying to do stuff, you are going to come up against the people who are happy and will sleep at night to take your money and run away. Right, whatever that looks like, right? It happens in all industries and all walks of life. And
you can't not trust anyone because then you won't move forward at all. You won't do anything, basically.
And then you've got to, your attitude towards that was, well done, you got me on that one. Yeah. That is the only attitude you can have, because otherwise you're just never going to do anything, are you?
And also it's just that learning to go, right, I learned so much just from that one mistake. That's never going to happen again. Hopefully I can tell other people to learn from it as well.
Well, that's it. And the rule we put in place was, instead of, well, leasehold's got to be really cheap for us to buy it and it's got to be a cash cow, which was our old rule, a new rule became, unless the freeholder is a local authority or a housing association or someone big enough to be doing their obligations. Because the problem with these small blocks is they're not performing their obligations. And then you're stuffed. So I was like, so that's changed now. So now I don't care how cheap it is. I mean, obviously, if it's 20 pence in the pound, we'll buy it and flip it into an auction. But on the basis that's probably not going to happen. Just won't deal with leasehold.
Litigation. Just talk. Unless it, yeah.
The only winners are the lawyers is such a true, it's a trope, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's such a true phrase.
Drawn out process as well.
Such a true phrase.
Yeah.
Unless both sides have got loads of, I've got a couple of friends who are litigators, and their average case, they work offshore. Average case takes 10 years. But the average net worth of either side of the equation is $100 million plus. So they've got the money to do it. They say most of it is not really about money anyway. It's more about principle and winning the game.
Yeah, winning the battle or the ego associated.
Yes, average case.
That is crazy.
Well, it sucks. It's going to suck 10 years of your life. There's a great program called Robbie's War about Robbie Chenguiz, if you've ever heard of him. Him and his brother going to court, and it just ruined his life. You ever think about suing anyone? Go and watch Robbie's War. That's the advice I give them.